This video is a supplement material. We're gonna talk about trig functions sine theta and cosine theta. Of course, the theta is a variable. I can write it as sine theta, sine x, cosine x. It's the same thing, just the different names of variable. The concept's the same. So personally, for me to memorize a bunch of things related to sine and cosine, I use this structure. On an xy plane, I draw a unit circle centered at origin. Unit circle means the radius is equal to 1. Okay? So now if I place a dot on the unit circle, then I can draw a line segment connecting the dot to the origin, and now I will get an angle in between. Usually it's the counterclockwise direction, between between the positive x direction to the line segment. Okay, so let me do this again. Erase the dot. I place a point on the circle, connect the point to the origin. Then I start from the positive x-axis and go counterclockwise. So this angle is the angle theta. Okay? And now we go back to this point. It's a point on the xy plane, so this point has coordinates x and y. So for example, this point has coordinate how many? 1 in the x coordinate, 0 because it has no height in the y coordinate, right? So any point on the plane has a xy coordinate to say where this point is. All right, and the rule is when I place this point on the circle and figure out the angle theta, the x coordinate is exactly the same as cosine theta value, and the y coordinate is the sine theta value. Okay, so let's use this point as an example. When I place this point, to avoid confusion, let me erase this. When I place this point here, connect that point to the origin. Now what is the angle in between this blue line segment and the positive x-axis? 0. There's no angle in between, right? Because they completely overlap. So in this case, I have theta equals 0. And according to the formula here, we have 1, 0, which is the coordinate, the x coordinate and the y coordinate, the coordinates of this point equals cosine theta, but what is the theta? 0, and the y coordinate is sine 0. So what do we know from here? We know therefore cosine of 0 is equal to 1 because that's the x coordinate, and the y coordinate is sine of 0, and that is equal to 0. Okay, so for spatial angles, if I forget, I tend to use this process to help me figure out what is the cosine value, what is the sine value. Let's do another example. How can I find cosine a half pi or sine a half pi? Okay, so to do so, I'm gonna first identify that point with angle a half pi. So I know pi is the entire 180 degrees, so half pi is 90 degrees. So half pi is here. So the point I'm looking for, it has the angle between this line segment and the positive x-axis being a half pi. So far, what did I do? I located this point that gives me angle equals a half pi. Now, if I go ahead and read the coordinates of this point, remember this is a unit circle, the radius is equal to 1. What is the coordinate for this? So you see it is sitting right on the y coordinate. So it's 0 in the x and it's 1 unit up in the y direction. So that is the coordinates for the point 0, 1. So according to the formula, 0 is for the cosine. So I have cosine a half pi equals 0, and I have sine a half pi equals 1. Okay. So this is in general how I would use to figure out the spatial values for the sine and cosine. Ideally, you want to memorize this. Okay, so I'm gonna say just write down the angles values for spatial angles. So cosine 0 equals 1. Cosine a half pi equals 0. Cosine pi equals -1. Why? Because pi is the angle that's all the way to here. So this point has -1 in the x coordinate, and that tells you cosine of pi. Okay. And similarly, you have sine of 0 equals 0, sine of a half pi equals 1, and the sine of pi equals 0. Okay? So ideally, I would shoot for, try to memorize this is spatial angles, values for the spatial angles, and know how to find the values using the unit circle. Just in case if at some point you are stressed out during the test or whatsoever, you're not sure if your solution is right, then you can always use the unit circle to double check. But for you to speed up and be able to answer questions very quickly, promptly, ideally I would suggest you to try, also as well memorize these values. Okay, so that's how that's a very brief introduction about the trig functions, the sine and the cosine.